So, you know the Loch Ness monster? That monster that most people said had to be fake even though it's been seen various times throughout the years? Yeah, it turns out that it might actually be real. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Loch Ness monster might actually exist, and I'm gonna tell you about it right now on IO. What is good, potatoes? You are watching InformOverload. I'm Charlotte, and on this channel we do the news and spill the tea and lock the nest. Subscribe, and if you don't follow us on social media, what are you even doing with your life? We got that Instagram, we got that Facebook, we got that Twitter. We don't got that TikTok. Man, I think I've reported 10 stories on the Loch Ness monster since I started working at IO. And as interesting as it is, I never thought that I would ever report a story about it actually being real. Actually this time. I kind of feel like the boy who cried wolf. But seriously, okay, all the sightings were from tourists and people who work at the loch, so I was always skeptical hearing about it. But this time is different. We got some sciencey people coming forward with DNA tests, okay? DNA! Man, I love DNA. For hundreds of years, coming up on 15 centuries, the legend of the Loch Ness monster has been perpetuated by many. It's been supposedly seen quite a few times, and the Loch Lake in Scotland has become somewhat of a tourist attraction. Most of the sightings have been either disproven or debunked, and most scientists think the Loch Ness is nothing more than a hoax that stemmed from myth. But apparently, some experts have changed their mind. Professor Neil Gemmell of the University of Otago in New Zealand decided to put the debate to rest. In June of 2018, he and his team set out to do an environmental DNA investigation of the Loch Ness. Being Scottish himself, the story was somewhat nostalgic for Gemmell. At the beginning of the study, he and the team of researchers didn't want to get excited about anything. They assumed that there wasn't a Loch Ness monster. He said, "I'm going into this thinking it's unlikely there is a monster, but I want to test that hypothesis." Using a research vessel deep scan across the length of the loch, the researchers traveled around the loch and took water samples from 3 different depths. They analyzed the water samples and collected DNA left behind in skin, scales, feathers, fur, and feces of creatures that live around the loch. They then sent the samples to labs in New Zealand, Denmark, Australia, and France to be analyzed. Professor Neil Gemmell and his team have now finished their research. Their team consists of experts in ecology, population, genomics, conservation, and evolutionary biology. While we don't know what the exact findings are yet, they say that the outcome of these tests were, quote, surprising. Did you hear that? Surprising. According to Professor Gemmell, they tested the data against most of the main theories that have been circulating about the Loch Ness monster, and one of those theories might be correct. So what are these theories exactly? Okay, so there's number 1, the Loch Ness monster is a long-necked plesiosaur that managed to survive the extinction of the dinosaurs. Plesiosaurs were around for a long time. They appeared in the Triassic period 203 million years ago. Then they thrived until the Cretaceous period, which is when the mass extinction event was 66 million years ago. Plesiosaurs have a broad flat body and a short tail. Some of them have very long necks and small heads, others didn't. The ones that had the long necks were relatively slow and ate small sea animals. I've always been fond of this theory because it's we know that crocodiles and alligators have been around since the age of the dinosaurs. How is it that some of their species survived until modern day, yet no water-dwelling dinosaurs survived? Isn't there somewhere, some remote area of the ocean or the planet that wasn't affected by the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs? And then maybe that would have allowed some of these dinosaurs to live on? I don't know, I'm not a scientist. But to me it sounded somewhat possible for the Loch Ness monster to be a plesiosaur. And then there's the other theory, and that's that the Loch Ness is some type of creature like a sturgeon or a catfish. Far less exciting, but unfortunately far more possible than a plesiosaur. Professor Gemmell said, "What we have achieved is what we set out to do, which is document the biodiversity of the Loch Ness in June 2018 in some level of detail. We've tested each one of the main monster hypotheses, and 3 of them we can probably say aren't right, and 1 of them might be." The research team didn't say much more about it. The findings of the study are supposed to be released in Scotland later this year. All Gemmell said was, I quote, "Is there anything deeply mysterious? It depends what you believe. Is there anything startling? There's a few things that are a bit surprising." A bit surprising? Bro, if you found out that Nessie was real, it's not a bit surprising, dude. That is a huge deal, okay? Bro. Bruh, do you even Nessie? I feel like as much as I would like the Loch Ness to be some sort of long-necked dinosaur like a plesiosaur, we probably would have far better pictures of it by now. That long neck would be pretty hard to hide. Plus, wouldn't it have to come up for air? Plesiosaurs are marine reptiles, but they breathed air and bore live young. There are indications that they were warm-blooded. With all the tourists constantly taking photos of the loch, especially with today's technology, someone would have seen it and have evidence of it. What is possible is that the Loch Ness Monster could be a giant fish that doesn't come up to the surface very often. There have been many notable Loch Ness sightings over the years. The earliest documentation of the monster in the vicinity of the Loch Ness appeared in the Life of St. Columba by Adamnan, written in the 6th century AD. It was about an Irish monk, St. Columba, that was staying in the land of the Picts when he came across locals burying a man by the river Ness. The locals explained that the man was swimming near the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater. Columba sent one of his followers to swim across the river. The water beast approached that follower, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further, do not touch the man, go back at once." The creature supposedly stopped in its tracks as if it was, quote, pulled back with ropes, and fled. The next documented sighting was made by Dr. Mackenzie in the 1870s, who saw an object that looked like a log or upturned boat wriggling around and churning up the water. Nessie mania first really began in the 1930s when a man named George Spicer in 1933 saw a, quote, most extraordinary form of an animal cross the road in front of his car. He and his wife said that the creature had a large body, 4 feet high and 25 feet long, with a long, wavy, narrow neck. They saw no limbs. What did it do, okay? Did it wiggle across the road? Then in 1933, the first photograph of the monster was published in the Daily Express. It was taken by Hugh Gray. The Secretary of State for Scotland ordered police at the time to prevent any attacks. And then there was the surgeon's photograph. The famous photo of the Loch Ness, you know, the one in black and white. It was taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson, a gynecologist. He actually didn't want his name attached to the image, so it was called the surgeon's photograph. He sent it to the Daily Mail and it was published in April of 1934. This was the prime piece of evidence that the Loch Monster really existed, but in 1975 the Sunday Telegraph accused it of being a hoax. It turns out that it was a toy submarine built by Christian Sperling, whose uncle was publicly ridiculed by his boss after he found Nessie footprints that turned out to be a hoax. To get revenge on the Daily Mail, Sperling's uncle created a hoax with several conspirators. The toy submarine was bought from Woolworths. Its head and neck were made from wood putty. They took it out to test it on the loch, took a photo of it, and gave it to Wilson, and Wilson sold the photos to the Daily Mail. This hoax is why so many people find it hard to believe that Nessie is real, because the prime piece of evidence is a hoax. But there are plenty of people who do believe the Loch Ness is real. There have been over 11 supposed sightings since 2019 began, which is a record amount. We won't know what the findings are of this DNA analysis until September of 2019, so I guess we're all gonna have to wait until then to know for sure. But for now, tell me your thoughts. What do you think the Loch Ness Monster really is, if it's real? Do you think it could be a plesiosaur or a dinosaur? Do you think it could be a fish? Or do you think all of this is baloney? Baloney. Let me know. For now, I'm gonna wrap up this video with some comment features. These are from our video Titanic 2 to set sail along the same route as original Titanic. Yuchi has said, pretty sure it can carry more potatoes than the original Titanic. Probably. For the Light King's name said, people so devastated by the sinking of Titanic they created global warming to get back at the iceberg. I'm pretty sure that's not what happened, but funny. Dark Red White said, since we all melted the ice, instead of an iceberg it will be a trashberg. Oh my god, I love this comment. I can't even say how much I love it. I love it! Bubba Williams said, why do I keep seeing some giving almost every IO video a thumbs down? You tell him, Bubba! Sand Skeleton said, I'll start a rebellion against the potato queen. I like broccoli. Ew. Broccoli's gross. Except it's pretty good with cheese. That is it for me. Thank you for watching. If you want to keep watching, check out this playlist. And obviously, if you like this video, you should leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and I will see you in a future IO video. Bye.